You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is our final episode of our Star Wars Celebration 2023 coverage. We're coming to you live here, 7 p.m. Central, and the show ended just a number of hours ago now, but this show is meant for us to kind of recap day 4, and then at the very end here, we're going to get into some of our top 3 moments of Star Wars Celebration. To my right, oh, sorry. He's no longer here. Jonesy's with us tonight, though. He's right in front of me. Jonesy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is a little bit weird to be back at home base here.
Yeah, I'm glad everything worked out. I'm glad you got home safely.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. No, it's been a fun few days. I really appreciate y'all having me out there.
Yeah, and I'll be very fair. I was very fair about this. We did not eat at Chipotle even one time while you were here. Did you notice that?
I did, and I am shocked the word Chipotle never even surfaced.
Never even brought it up.
At all.
Stop labeling me, guys. Stop labeling me.
You label yourself, in all fairness.
That's very true. I bring it upon myself. And Lauren, welcome to this marathon. You finally reached the end of your Jedi trials here on the Cantina Cast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It definitely was a Jedi trials, but you know what? I made it through, and that's the important thing.
Yep.
These are moments in life you'll look back on at some point and be like, wow, remember when we did 6 live streams over the course of 4 days?
Whose stupid idea was that?
Yeah, that was miserable. Never do that again.
It was my first celebration coverage, so that's a big deal. So I'm glad I got to be a part of it.
Yeah. It was fun. No, this was good. I think we did just enough, that we needed to kind of cover everything. And I know we had a lot of viewership, honestly, more than we normally do. And I was talking to Jonesy about this. I think it was last night. We were kind of talking about why we had so many views, and there really weren't a lot of shows that were doing something like this, right? Where they were covering every single day, or even having multiple shows in a single day. And a lot of the shows that you would expect to kind of cover this stuff, they were tweeting, but they were at Celebration. And so, we know from firsthand experience, that's almost an impossible task to not only report on what's going on, but at the same time, trying to record a show and edit it and release it. And it becomes too much, and suddenly it becomes all work. And you kind of lose some of the enjoyment of just being at Celebration experience. And it just feels like a job. So thankfully we were there for anybody that needed us to be there to kind of cover this stuff and encapsulate it the way we did. And we'll see what happens in a couple years from now. But, more on that here in just a little bit. So, all right. Well, let's get into this. We're going to talk about the panels that they had today. The Bad Batch panel, Star Wars Visions Season 2 panel, and then there was the Doug Chiang talking about designing Obi-Wan Kenobi Mandalorian. And then we'll get into some of the live interview stuff as well. But let's start with, I don't want to poo-poo this, but it was kind of another downer, I guess. But the Marvel Comics panel was kind of anticlimactic. I mean, we got what Jonesy just threw up here, which is the Dark Droids comic. And I'll let you kind of pitch that one, Jonesy, but just kind of overall thoughts on without as positive as you can be. How was the Marvel Comics panel?
Well, we didn't see the panel because they didn't televise it, and they didn't even really make any kind of mention of it, which is really disappointing. StarWars.com had a very brief summary of a few of the things that they're doing, like Dark Droids. Dark Droids is going to be written by Charles Soule, so I think that is a positive there. So Charles Soule, again, continues to be involved in the Marvel Comics slate. A lot of what they talked about continued to be more of the High Republic, things that we were getting, showing us some covers for some of the material that are coming, especially for the Darth Vader series. A lot of really cool covers are coming out for that, which I think is really great. I think also a couple for Dr. Aphra, and but maybe some for Yoda. But again, it was just things that we already kind of had. This is the next event, is this Dark Droids event. Mm-hmm. It seems to me, while I didn't get a lot of clarity around what this actually is, it's horror inspired, and it seems to be, if we look at the Aphra series, we got introduced to 000 and BT, and I think you and I covered this years ago, I think, Albert, these just 2 assassin droids that are just Murder, Death, Kill, like it's just MDK all the time, just MDK. And so
which is really fun.
it has been super fun, and they've kind of had a resurgence here in recent months as well. I mean, they never really went away, but they continue to evolve and develop. And one of the things, almost like a throwback to Solo, almost was, this idea of liberating other droids so they can go out there and murder and kill people as well. To their substantial programming. So, but otherwise, Lauren said this best. Publishing in general, the Celebration, a little bit of a letdown,
I would agree. I mean, I'm liking the Dark Droids concept, and I think you mentioned they've been kind of hinting at this for some time now. That this has always kind of been one of their plans. It's almost like Pinky and the Brain. They've been speculating or trying to come up with a plan on ruling the world at some point, and maybe that's what this is going to be. But yeah, I would agree. Lauren, did you get a chance to look at anything here? I know there was, again, it was pretty sparse, but any other comments here on this before we move on?
Yeah, well, with Charles Soule is one of those writers that anything that he writes, I will read. So I'm looking forward to it, that he's going to be contributing more to the Marvel comics. But yeah, I do wish, it's like you said, I wish that we could have gotten some more announcements, some more updates in terms of publishing in general when it comes to comics and novels. But I mean, we did get some announcements which sound cool, but hopefully as the year goes on, we'll be getting some more.
Yeah. If anything, Dark Horse had probably the strongest publishing panel period, like all around, and it was pretty light as well. But I'm disappointed because Lauren and I had talked about this before. We were really hoping that we would get a Porter Engle follow-up, for the Blade, because it ended. They've been hinting that we're going to get more Porter Engle. It doesn't seem to be happening yet. At least they're not willing to tell us about it yet. And so that's pretty disappointing that we didn't get at least something like that in other one-shots or more character-driven things like we're getting with Yoda right now, or Son of Staros, different features on individual characters, like Quinlan Voss or Qui-Gon Jinn or anybody.
As far as Porter Engle goes, they did mention it at the High Republic panel, so I'm hopeful that that's still happening. But yeah, I agree with you that I would have liked to have heard more about it at the Marvel one too.
Yeah. He said, I think Charles Soule confirmed that he would be in Phase 3, is what he said. So there's that. Now, whether that's, I'm sure it's a comic, but maybe there's something more. I don't know, but definitely going to get more.
I'm sure he's going to be in the books. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be in the books because he was important in Phase 1. So makes sense. Yeah. But anyway, unfortunately, that's about it we got on the comic front. I mean, that's really like it.
Okay, we'll move on. Let's talk about the Bad Batch panel, because that was one that was really good. Like, it was a really good panel, beginning to end. I mean, you had Brad Rao. You can see Jennifer Corbett there. Athena Portillo is the woman in the middle, and then you of course got D. Bradley Baker, and then Michelle Ong at the very end. And just quickly for me, we were talking about just before we came on air that we're going to do our top 3, but I was struggling not to put this in my top 3, and it didn't make it. It's definitely an honorable mention, but I don't know. Maybe it's just coming off the emotional high or down, however you want to look at it, from the end of, what we've seen so far at the end of season 2. But just I guess one thing, the big takeaway for me was just how vested in these characters all of these people are. And every one of them it's at some point during this particular panel, they were getting choked up. Like, you could see them visually getting choked up and about to kind of break down, especially Michelle Ong, right? When she was kind of talking about that whole tech and the way she found out about it, was literally reading that script and thinking, okay, well, maybe this isn't really going to be happening. And then by the time she gets to the very end of the script, she was just like in shell shock. Like, she could not believe that this was going to happen. I think they did a pretty good job of explaining that. We'll come back to that. We've got a lot here to talk about tech because there was a big portion of this panel. But Jonesy, what other things stood out for you as you were watching this?
This was a great panel. What I loved most about this was it was a really cool blend of like the actors talking and character development, the creative element of creating the characters, setting, like understanding where they came from, where they were at during the season, what the ideas were behind it, a little bit of technical flavor behind it too, like how they did some of the stuff, at least, very superficially, of course, but the challenges that go into it. To me, this was just a really well-rounded panel that each person was engaging in their own way. And I really, really loved this panel a lot more than I was one of those people. I thought this was going to be a bit of a I hate to say a throwaway panel, but just, a little bit uninspiring and what we had before, right? And maybe, I think last year, Dee Bradley Baker and Michelle Long did a live reading, which is really cool whenever you could see everyone in motion. Mm-hmm. But, and yeah, we got a trailer at the end of this, which of course was super cool. But at the same time, just being able to have a different, well-rounded approach to all of this really surprised me that we got a lot more meat to it. And maybe it's because we're so fresh coming off the Bad Batch that may have been much more impactful this year than it was last year because it was just all so fresh for us.
Yeah. How about you, Lauren? How was it watching these guys getting emotionally tied up in these characters and stories?
Yeah, I mean, that's always my favorite part of anytime we get to see these actors do interviews is getting to hear how much the characters mean to them and how, I mean, you could hear them getting choked up at certain parts when they're talking about certain events that occurred. So that always is really great to see. And it almost makes me, it like deepens my relationship to the characters too when I'm hearing the actors talk about how much it means to them. So I love seeing that. The other thing that's crazy too is like, I mean, we know that Dee Bradley Baker is the Bad Batch, but like it's so weird when you actually watch it and you see one person talking about all of these characters. So it's always like shocking to see that, even though we already know. It's like seeing it in person is another thing.
Yeah. There was a few moments in there where he was kind of evoking different characters. We love you too. He said that really loud in Wrecker's voice. He did Tech at one point. He did Hunter at one point. He did, who was the other one he did? Was it Mayday?
Crosshair? He did Crosshair?
Well, he did Crosshair. Yeah, that's for sure.
I don't remember.
There was one other one that it might have been Cody. It was Cody. It was very.
Well, either Cody or Rex. That's
right. There was no context, but they sound very similar. And then we've heard this before. We've talked about it on the show, but it's worth mentioning yet again. They were talking about how initially, he would read all of the lines for a particular character, read all the lines for a second character, cut. And just through the years of the Clone Wars and now into Bad Batch, he can read, and it's just mind blowing, but he can read the script and just jump from one character to the next with the voices, no hesitation, no pausing. And it's crazy to think that he's got all this stuff in his head. The other, while we're talking about Dee Bradley Baker, I did find it interesting too that they talked about the how does he come up with the voices and how they present to him some concept art, and he asks a couple questions. But for the most part, by and large, these are all his own creation. These slight nuances to the tone and inflections, or he's got a couple questions about whether or not they're serious, are they not serious, that kind of thing. But then he just takes his own spin on it, and for the most part, it sounds like he's always hit gold. He's never struck out in terms of coming up with a very distinct voice. And the last thing was just them talking about how they can close I was doing this too. Like, I didn't really think about it, but yeah, for the most part, I would say 99% of the clones. Okay. Maybe that's over exaggeration, yeah. But for the most part, at least with the Bad Batch for sure. And even some of the more well-known clones, you can close your eyes and you can tell who is who, even though it is all the same person. So that's just a tribute to just how incredibly talented Dee Bradley Baker is in coming up with those differences with the clones.
It's pretty incredible because what was important was also to have an element of Rex. And they talked about this earlier in Celebration, but it was important to have an element of Rex in all of the clones. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just Rex or just Cody or the Regs, right? Even with the Bad Batch, there was still an element of Rex present in each one of them for that consistency. And they developed that way early on in the Clone Wars, of course, but it was really cool to have that. You just hear it all the time. They're all familiar, and they're all. You could tell that they're all somewhat related, or they're all related. But you're right; they all have a very individual and very specific type of tone to it, or timbre, or just a different cadence as well.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, Lauren, but they did talk about their favorite moments, and I was surprised. Maybe not, because I think we talked about this on the show as an incredible episode. But that Mayday episode. The Outpost came up a lot in this conversation, and even the one later on when they went out to the Celebration live stage. But I don't think we got your input on this because you weren't part of some of the shows. But if you had to pick on the spot one episode that you felt like was favorite, even if you don't know the name of it, but what was like the favorite episode for you? Because I think the Outpost for me was one of the top ones, and I don't know that I would disagree that wasn't the best episode, honestly, for that season.
Okay, I'm remembering episode titles is not my strong suit. The one where Crosshair shoots the Imperial.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, yes.
Yep.
That episode, just like the way that it was so tense from start
Yeah.
to finish and kind of like that build up, it was just so well done that one has really stayed with me the most, probably.
I like that another one that was a popular one, where I think it was Michelle Long, was the one where where Omega and Tech were able to finally not only have that disconnect, and this is in the mines when they get trapped in the mines, of course, but
yes. Yeah.
but when they fight, they argue, but then they also come back together, and just the overall, and it was a great mix of both emotional moments, but also technical capability of the team behind the Bad Batch when it comes to what they were able to achieve with the bioluminescence, which she shared a story from New Zealand, where she's from, and they have something very similar over there. And so just having all of those things kind of come together, but also within the character moment, and just hearing even Brad Rao and Athena, like the way that, or maybe more Athena, who's more on the technical front, she drives the team. They're thinking of pixels and polygons, right, kind of thing,
and money.
That they and money and budget and producing and all that, but that for them, like, to be able to also attribute that to certain moments and how to bring those to life is just so special whenever you can actually make that. And we made comment after comment after comment this year about the technical ability of this show, lighting, the animation, expressions, just every little thing about this show this season.
Yeah.
Was just absolutely incredible. I mean, visually, it was so amazing to watch it, and then to have all of the acting and all of the other things that come together. It's a really special team, I think.
Yeah, for sure. That episode that you were talking about, I don't remember the name of it either, but I just remember when they came out to the celebration stage, they labeled it the Goonies episode, and I was like, oh, I'm glad they said that, because that's what we talked about, and it kind of evoked a lot of those same memories. So let's talk quickly on let's talk about Crosshair very quickly. They didn't get into a lot of Crosshair, and I would expect, I guess that probably makes sense given, his fate's still to be determined, but I did find it very interesting, and I'm going to take this and run with it. But in the context of the conversation, D. Bradley Baker mentioned that he always loved Star Wars is about stories of redemption. And so for me, that was enough for me to take that and go, okay, so we're not being set up for Crosshair being a mindless zombie, turned evil kind of thing like that. It does sound like we may get a redemption arc for him. I would still venture to guess that he's still going to be conflicted, and it's not going to be a very clean transition, just given where he's been. I mean, his own personality going into all of this, and then certainly what's happened with the Empire and how that's probably changed him a lot, maybe for the worse or for not for better. How about that? So it was interesting, though, they did speak about Crosshair in that kind of that context, and then them also talking about just how the differences between season 1, season 2, and how season 1 was really focused on Omega, Hunter, and Wrecker, and season 2 was mostly Echo, Tech, and Omega. I do wonder if going into season 3 it's going to be Omega, Crosshair, and I don't know who else at that point, but I guess we're going to see a lot more Crosshair very soon. Absolutely, we are, and I think rightfully so. And they intentionally, I love hearing the intent behind all of it too, because some of the things that we had talked about throughout the season came out to be very much true, or they were very obvious, I think, to probably most people too. But it was just great to see such, and man, just deliberate activities and deliberate decisions of what they wanted to do. Yes, when we get Crosshair, they're going to be very impactful, but we want to keep that touch point light because we want it to mean more. But and I like it. It was not only about redemption though that D. Bradley Baker was talking about. It's about redemption and hope, right? And we had talked a little bit about this early in the weekend too. That when you have hope in Star Wars, that's the idea behind it all, right? Is that yes, even when times get really dark, and they describe this as the Empire Strikes Back of the trilogy, right? For Bad Batch season 2 of 3 seasons, and season 3 will be the finale. Of course, we'll talk about it in a minute, but to have that and to have that hope. Things are dark, and we talked about this in the finale. Those are so important to be able to glean something from, even when times seem like they're at their worst. So I love that they're so deliberate in the way that they approach this, and it's very, everything is very well calculated from their perspective and very well thought through, even down to the little sushi and the animation of the sushi and food and stuff that Brad Rao gets very, very, very excited about, apparently. Wrapped up in. Let's kind of let's before we get into the I guess the 3 seasons and the trailer, let's talk about Tech, because there was a lot of discussion around Tech. Really somber moments. It did feel like one of the cast members had died. I mean, the way they were talking about him, and I'm not trying to be funny or make slight of it. It just, you can tell again there was a lot of emotional weight that this character, who was not a live action person, who's simply a voice, a voice construct from somebody who does other voices very similar, but it's a testament to the writing. It's a testament to the relationships that were built over seasons 1, season 2, and even in the Clone Wars as well. But I guess, Lauren, for you, as you were watching all of that Tech stuff, did you ever get? And this is what I know, Jonesy's got it in his little tagline. It says "Rest in peace, Tech." But I guess one of the things that I kind of walked away with this that wasn't said, but maybe it was, that I don't think he's coming back, and I think they did a pretty good job of kind of laying out why there's a case for Tech to be dead and what this really does for the teams, and taking into account the perspective of the risk that was involved. Because we talked about the risk, but they did a really good job of saying, like, Grand Moff Tarkin is involved, and the minute he touches anything, death, decay, destruction, something is going to happen. I took all of that and walked away with, like, I really don't think we're getting Tech back, and maybe for a good reason, I guess, even though it hurts. But I know Jonesy's. I'm sorry, dude. I didn't want to go to you first. I want you to kind of gather yourself.
Yeah.
Get yourself together there. Prepare yourself. You're a wreck. But Lauren, what did you think?
Well, before, I really thought that Tech wasn't dead. I was like, nah, like, come on, he's not dead. But now I do feel like the way that they were talking about the impact that it had on the story, the way that it impacted the characters, now I do feel like him dying was very intentional, and so intentional to the point that I don't think that they would go back and undo it. So, and the emotions too, them, because, I feel like with other characters that we've seen in Star Wars, whenever there's a chance that they're not dead, usually the cast has a little bit of a different attitude about it. They'll be like, oh, we don't know. But that was not the energy
right.
at all.
It's like they just came from the wake and went straight onto the stage is kind of what happened.
Yeah. So now I don't think he's coming back.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think I'm with y'all. I mean, I think there's always opportunity, and they could always change their minds, I suppose. But the way that they framed it was exactly how we had talked about this entire season, and really anything in Star Wars where you have to understand what's at stake. You have to, as a viewer, you have to feel like there was a lot at stake, and it can be taken away from you for it to be that meaningful. You don't have to kill characters for it to have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to put them in risk and put them in harm's way, you have to feel like there is a chance that things will go badly. And after enough times of doing that and something doesn't, in order to maintain realism, you have to pull that back, and something has to happen, and it has to be permanent. Otherwise, it doesn't mean you lose credibility with your audience in that way. And they were saying a lot of those similar things on the panel, that for any of this stuff to mean anything, and to have, and the line that Tech delivers and have it be complete counterpoint to what Crosshair has, right?
Oh, that was beautiful. That never crossed my mind. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like, we've heard it over and over. It's like poetry, right? It rhymes and stuff, but it's very much an echo, right, of saying good soldiers follow orders from Crosshair. And D. Bradley Baker doing the voices wasn't fair, D. Gosh.
Yeah.
But saying good soldiers follow order, and then coming back and then in Tech's voice, saying, when have we ever followed orders? And it just hits you. I just wasn't prepared for it. I was like, man, I can't. How did we not catch that? Maybe we did, and I just don't remember it that we didn't. But anyway, it was just so perfect, right? I mean, and we understand. We drew the connection anyway. But when you have moments like that, and you're able to say, no, this is really how it is. Like, this is, quote unquote, real life in Star Wars. It has to mean something. There, that risk has to be there. That sacrifice has to be there too, and we don't want to cheapen that. Mm-hmm. And I think also for Crosshair, it means something to Crosshair later on. He just doesn't know it yet. Right. And I think, and you and I were talking just in the car or overnight or whatever it was. And I came out and said, I think Crosshair survives all of this. I don't know that we lose anybody else from Bad Batch in season 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is an opportunity where Crosshair finally recognizes that sacrifice, and it really does go all in back with the team. In some way, there's a lot of damage to repair, clearly. But, I think it really speaks, I think has a positive outlook for how Crosshair will rejoin the team, Omega specifically, and move this forward and really be his sacrifice won't be in vain for the team as a whole.
Yeah. The last thing on this was just D. Bradley Baker. I love the fact that he mentioned that this was the one clone that he could relate to the most. And then this just started that whole the conversation that he was having, or the discussion he was having, that really kind of choked him up here. And he ended with, "I'll never forget that guy." And it was tough for him to get those words out. A little bit later, he said something very similar. I forget what the wording is, but it might have been on the when they came out to the stage. No, it was definitely a little bit here in this one. It was a little bit later. He said something very similar again about how he wasn't going to forget him and all that. So yeah, overall, great panel. Really enjoyed the discussions. It was such a treat. If you are even the slightest fan of the Bad Batch, go watch this. And it really, for me, I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds, I don't know, trivial, shallow of me. I don't know. That's fair. But it made me enjoy season 2 more. I don't know if that's weird. I don't know how to like explain that. But
we've talked about this in a bunch of other circumstances. When you get that different perspective and you get that more like what goes into it, it enhances your enjoyment of the material.
Yeah,
at least it does for me immensely. I don't know if it is the same for y'all, but man, it really does mean a lot more to me whenever I hear the passion, the planning, the forethought, the energy, everything that goes into it. I appreciate the work so much more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the why. Yeah,
the why was important for me because I think that's where I was scratching my head on a lot of these episodes or some of the decisions that were being made. But now it all kind of makes sense. It just, and
they even talked about why, the whole Sid thing. Like they did talk about what that actually meant, and it helped us. Like if you watch that panel,
with Sid. Yeah, I think you said Sith. I was like,
no, with Sid. Yeah,
Sid.
We're watching the same show.
Right. No, with Sid. Sorry. Yeah, that helps you understand why all of that was important in their frame of mind when they're shaping the episode. And when you have that, when you go back and rewatch that, you have a slightly different take on it that perhaps changes your perspective of how you viewed it that first time and gives you a better appreciation about what they were going for. Yeah. And I don't think that's a shortcoming either. I don't think that's an oversight. Sometimes you just get that clarity that you needed to really grab to the content and really understand it better. And that's where things like this panel really do enhance the material incredibly, and in just so many different ways too.
Yeah. So this the panel ended with the trailer. They did show a trailer. We did get footage of the trailer.
It's pretty
some dude's melon is in the entire thing. So
too, they frame. You have a nice V shape in the middle. I think of the video.
It's just like two massive heads. Like the heads could not be any bigger, unfortunately. But
Lauren, did you expect to get a trailer from this?
No, not at all. It felt really early to be getting a trailer.
I was stoked that we already had one, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And what did they say? 2024?
Next year, yeah.
Next year? Yeah, okay. So next year, so we got the trailer. At some point, we'll probably talk about that in one of our follow-up shows down the road. Just to kind of wax in a little bit, I think we pretty much covered everything in the live interview that they did. That was with Brad Rao. Who else was in there? That was Jennifer Corbett. And Athena. Yeah, Athena was in there as well. It was just those three, but they did ask at the end of that whether or not Cody had lived. And their exact response, and I quote, is the galaxy is a very large place. Or it's a big galaxy, sorry. It's a big galaxy. And they kind of chuckled and winked and nodded, that sort of thing. So
that's what I was talking about earlier. Yes. Yeah. That's the difference. If there's somebody that might still be alive, that's usually how they act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. Jonesy just pulled it up here, but that was the panel there. So good stuff there. I really enjoyed the Bad Batch coverage this year. Really good job. Okay. Let's move into one of the more high adrenaline and thorough panels. And this is the Star Wars Vision Season 2. First off, I was not expecting this to come out on May 4th. I think I was and I started doing the math. I'm like, holy crap, that's less than 30 days. We don't even have this on our schedule, of stuff to cover. So we're going to have to squeeze this thing in here as well. So just kind of a programming note, we are going to come back and do a Star Wars Vision Season 1 year later kind of thing. I think that probably would be good too for folks that maybe didn't catch the first season or just kind of want a real quick refresher without having to, not that these things are very long either. I mean, you can blow through them in less than 30 minutes because they're pretty short. But we're going to do a 1 year later episode, probably about the week before this releases. And then when this comes out, or just before it comes out, we'll do a final hype in the final hype show, I do want to get into all of the 9 studios that were tapped to create these stories. We'll get into the voice actors, get into what we know about the stories themselves. And there's actually quite a bit that came out of this panel. So we're not going to talk about it tonight because it's just too much. But in a nutshell, holy bananas. Like, this looks so freaking good. And I didn't even catch this the first time. We'd seen some stuff. We went and eaten breakfast. Jonesy left. And then I'm sitting here and I was floored like at 2 p.m. my time, because it dawned on me after finally reading this crap and listening to it this isn't just Japan. Like, this is all over the place. This is Ireland. Right. We've got, there's England in there. They've got South America or South Africa. There's a Chilean company that's doing this. So really, really cool stuff and perspectives. But I'll stop yammering on here. Lauren, what did you think about, how did you feel about season 1 of Visions? And are you looking forward to volume 2 here?
Yeah, I really like having these different perspectives of these stories all coming together. So I am excited about season 2 and getting to see, like, on the trailer, all of those different art styles coming together, and kind of like those artists' different interpretations and additions to that Star Wars aesthetic that we already know. It kind of makes it makes the storytelling feel a little fresh and a little bit different, even though there's also like those very recognizable things that we're seeing too. So I think it's going to be really cool and like a really great addition to some of the animated stuff that we already have as well.
Yeah. Josie, you're pulling up some of the visuals right now, and they're just freaking phenomenal. But
it's such a great mix of and diverse set of artistic styles, different techniques. I mean, we've got stop motion animation, claymation effectively going on, right?
Right.
And there's a huge fan base for some of that stuff, but some of the artwork on this is just absolutely incredible. And some of it looks like it's going to be so much fun. Some of it looks like it is going to be hella intense, right? And again, this is something that volume 1, it had a nice balance of, I think. You know, some worked a little better for us for our interest levels and things like that, but I think there's a little bit of a smattering of content here for everybody that really gets your imagination or really gets your thought process going. And this is an example of one of the stop motion animation. It's just incredible looking. The detail that they put into this is absolutely breathtaking and stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that I was not prepared for. I mean, we knew Visions 2 or Volume 2 was going to be coming out. We knew we were going to get something for it. We know it's coming out May the 4th. I think you haven't looked at a calendar to see how we're going to get all this fit in, but but definitely when this comes around, we're going to cover all of this stuff, and we'll figure out the best way to break it down. But it is absolutely amazing, and the performances that they had in the trailer alone, just the voice acting was incredible too. Just the energy behind it, the fun that some of them are having, but also the depth of what they were doing. But man, some of the lighting effects, like we've got one here of the ATST, which I thought was just amazing. Anytime we have great lighting, I get all nerding out and all that stuff. But
yeah,
I mean, I've got like a dozen photos of just Visions in here.
We'll keep cycling through them here, but yeah, because they're great. That one you've got right now, I know we said we'd talk about this, but just quickly on this one, this is the Chilean one, and it's actually based on a real life event that happened less than 100 years, where the colonists had come in and kind of overran the locals there. And that guy, we'll get into his name at some point down the road, was just talking about how this is based on live events. They've just changed the names. Instead of the colonists, the people that were invading, they just changed it to the Empire. These are supposed to be the Chileans. And for the most part, it's almost like a reenactment just in Star Wars. So going that deep and making it that personal is just really unprecedented for Star Wars stuff. I mean, the other thing quickly, you mentioned the claymation stuff. It's actually Aardman Studios. So if you're a fan of like Wallace and Gromit,
right,
that's the studio that's doing this. That's when I was like, wait a minute, why does it look so much like Wallace and Gromit? Yeah. And I'm reading through this and I'm like, holy bananas!
Because it is.
And there's also an Easter egg. One of the droids is from Wallace and Gromit. If you go out there and do a search, and they mentioned in the interview for that one too that it is littered. I mean, it's supposed to be funny and all that. And there were some really good moments with the Wookiees pulling the arms off, because they're known to do that, right? Especially on baby Wookiees pull the arms off of their toys or stuffed animals.
Right.
But they said that episode is just completely littered with all kinds of Wallace and Gromit and all the others, the incredible animation that Aardman Studios has done throughout all of it. So It sounds like there's going to be a feast on the eyes and just Easter eggs galore. But
so, Lauren,
this,
do you like it? Oh, I'm sorry, Albert.
No, I was going to say, let's talk about this one too when we get a chance, but you can ask Lauren a question here.
Well, I was going to ask her, do you like so with the first volume, we had a more consistent style of animation. It was very Japanese inspired. And now with this one, it's a really eclectic mix and really global in nature. Do you like the consistency of the approach of volume one, or do you like this really, like they're all unique stories anyway? So no, it's totally cool that they would be in completely different styles and really completely different representation.
I like either way. I like it for different reasons. Like consistency can be nice because you're having like the same sort of like tone and mood throughout. But then on the other hand, seeing all of these different styles coming together was really special, and getting to see like these different studios with their own distinct look, like kind of like Albert was talking about the Wallace and Gromit, like you could tell immediately by looking at it. And so
Yeah.
that aspect is really fun as well. So I think it's cool that they kind of have in each season, they're kind of going about a different visual approach.
Yep.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah, this one is one of the standouts. And then the use of color, we're going to have to get into all this. It's just so fascinating, like the amount of thoughtfulness that went into everyone. And you think about it, right? A lot of these, this is what we saw in season one or volume one of the Visions, when we saw the interviews pre and post the season. There were a lot of these creators that were saying, I grew up as a Star Wars fan, never thought because I lived in Japan that I would ever have this opportunity to create anything in Star Wars. And then being able to kind of put their own twists and all of that, and just the liberty, the creative freedom that's being provided by Lucasfilm is really creating these really great stories. And as much as they are so like legends and so not really canon, it's just fascinating stuff to see. And because they only get 9 minutes, and this is to them, this is probably the only thing they'll ever do kind of thing. They really go all in. Like they put so much thought and effort into this stuff, more than they probably would in other stuff. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. The trailer again is out there.
Sorry.
Oh,
So
yeah.
So we're highlighting one of our Discord listeners, or one of our Discord participants, Rizal Tezal. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is at Celebration. So thanks for pinging us on that. And he actually was at this panel, and they said they got to watch the I Am Your Mother episode, and said it was beautiful. It's exciting that they found studios from all over the world to tell season 2 stories. So
Yep.
really cool that they got to watch a full episode of this, and that the response is already considerably positive and awesome. So
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know that before we came on air. So that's really really cool.
I don't know that anything's ever going to top the Tatooine song. What was that
Tatooine
one?
rocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree, actually.
I knew you were a fan of that song. I was not the biggest fan of it. I like the episode.
That's actually
Music.
half the fun, not going to lie. Is that it's not your favorite? So I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Okay. Then you double down on that one.
Right.
All right. You got anything else you want to throw up there as far as screens before we move on here?
I think that's the last one for Vision. So yeah, just to come back real quickly though, we will break those down. We're figuring out what the right number of, I think last year we did 3 at a time, but we'll see how long these are, how deep they are, and we will bring you all, of course, comprehensive coverage of all of the episodes, just like we always do. So stay tuned for that here in the coming weeks.
Yep. Okay, let's talk just quickly about. There was an Indian episode too from India.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I snuck that one at the end. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Don't get me excited here. Let's talk about Doug Chiang and his designing Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Mandalorian. This was another one that was really, really cool to watch, and it was really just Doug Chiang up there doing his best TED Talk presentation with a clicker and a PowerPoint behind him. But just the insight.
Speaking your love language.
I know, death by PowerPoint is my thing. But just the insight that he had. I mean, he's been kind of, one of the primary. I think he is now the primary designer. I forget what his official title is, but
right.
He was brought in, during Phantom Menace. That was kind of like however many years ago that is now. And so he's been around the block for a number of years. And I thought this was going to be, Doug Chiang talking about a lot of the stuff he already did, but it was a different twist because I didn't realize just how much inspiration he was drawing upon from his own work, having done the Phantom Menace and the prequel trilogy, and incorporating that into both the Kenobi series as well as the Mandalorian. And he was getting into, and it was a really comprehensive breakdown on characters, vehicles, the backgrounds, the set designs, I mean, he really had his hand, and his team had their hand in just about everything, down to the finest detail. We'll get into some of this stuff here very specifically, but did you get a chance to finish this panel, Jonesy? And what did you think as you're kind of watching all this? The reason I say that is because I was not expecting him to get into very, very recent episodes of Mandalorian like he did towards the very end. I was like, whoa, we're going to really talk about this right now?
It was a really long panel, so no, I did not get a chance to go. But this is one I'm going to go back and like watch straight through. I was trying to get a lot of the high points and get some visuals here for the show tonight. But I love listening to experts and people who are really passionate about their work, but also they can speak to you in a way that is still, it gets a little bit of technical aspect to it, but it keeps it at the right level so it's digestible for everyone. And Doug Chiang has that nice balance for it. So it's a kind of a technical discussion of sorts, but it's more process oriented on the technical side of it. So it's really just amazing to see these things evolve. They had some, I've only got one or two in here, but like towards the end of the panel, they showed like the evolution of Vader, throughout various stages of being reassembled, right? And just the amount of thought. And they even had a live sketch of, I think it was maybe not the Krayt Dragon, but one of the creatures. And it was just going on in the background.
Florida Gator, I think. Or
the big croc on Mandalorian, right? Yeah, but I mean, it's just being penciled in while he talks in the background. You just get a better appreciation for the amount of time and effort it goes into one drawing, and why these things. But getting an idea of like, no, they're visually working on these projects, 6, 7, 8 weeks before anything's even written. These are all ideas, right? This is storyboarding. It's like before storyboarding in some respects. And so they're just working off of ideas and trying to get design elements on paper to help fuel the creative process. So just, it's walking and getting behind that curtain a little bit. And I'm glad that they dedicated this panel. This is one I thought was going to be super interesting, but I didn't expect it to just be as engaging as it was. And I should know better because I've watched Doug Chiang's, previous ones in past years.
He's so good.
And they've always been good. He's always shared the stage. And so I was like, oh, okay, so it could be by himself. How, like, nope. I've learned my lesson. So absolutely fantastic though. Give me the Art of books, please. Already. Art of Obi-Wan Kenobi, please.
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah. Where is that? Like, what are we waiting for? I don't understand.
Dude, those have been coming so late, like later and later. I don't, maybe they just don't sell very well, but I'll shut up about it now. But please.
Yeah, no, please. I'll co-sign all of that. So as some of you may not know, but Lauren is definitely the most creative person here between the three of us. She does artwork on the side. You can plug that later if you want. Without a doubt, she is. So as a creative, artistic person yourself, Doug Chiang and his inspiration, the work that he does, I mean, he is a second coming of Ralph McQuarrie, and as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I don't think anybody would dispute that. He's just another one of those godlike figures in terms of artwork. But when you see all of this stuff and you've grown up with him, right? What's the inspiration there for you?
Yeah, well, I was really, I mean, just watching this, it did remind me of how every single detail is thought out. Like there is not a single thing that they overlook. And that, I think that the impact of remembering that, it does make you think about like, it's easy for us sometimes to sit here and like pick apart the visuals as fans, but it's really like when I hear them say that, I'm like, I don't have any grounds to be picking apart anything because they just think it all through. Everything's very intentional with the decisions that they're making. And so I really liked hearing him talk about that. But, and also too, something else that struck me was when he was talking about how there were teams of artists working on Mandalorian and Obi-Wan at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that struck me as well, because being a creative person that like, tries to put out a certain amount of artwork on a regular basis, it's like, it's not like you just have like an endless well of
time, energy, inspiration. Yeah, all
right. It's not a light switch to flip between the two of them either, right?
Right. It's like, it's a discipline that you have to be able to produce this type of stuff on a regular basis and to be reliable with it. So him describing how these teams of people were having to do both of those shows at the same time too was like really impressive.
Yeah. I think he mentioned they were working half of the week on one show, and then midway they'd flip over to the other show, and like, wow, talk about trying to, switch the gears or, turn that little ship around there. one of the things too, so speaking to what I guess to expand upon what you were talking about around the creative process and just the thoughtfulness that goes into a lot of this stuff, I felt the same way. Where this really kind of exposed itself for me was when he was talking about the design of the Inquisitor, of the Grand Inquisitor, and then later on, talking about, Mandalore, and the sister, right, and Reva, and what they did with her, and how they lost the helmet. All of that stuff was like by design, and like you said, so many people were quick to say, "Wow, this is super lazy of them," right? Who are these people at Disney that don't even know what they're doing anymore? And this is like the fandom menace. I'm not talking about the people that follow our show or kind of like Star Wars, but they were, I mean, they were throwing shade at these guys, and I'm like, I don't think they realize that this is Doug Chiang. So one, it seems sacrilegious that they would even say that to begin with. But to your point, the amount of thoughtfulness that goes into it, these are very conscious decisions. They spend a lot of time talking about it, and some of these design choices were for practical reasons. And some, you could argue that why did they just CGI? Well, it's a budget thing too, right? We don't know what that looks like or how much they were over, under, that kind of thing. So,
well, and actually, Doug Chiang talked about that specifically too. He said they're working on about 2/3 the budget at best of a motion picture, and so the budget is a big part of it. We have to dial it back a little bit. While we want cinematic Star Wars on the TV screen, on the small screen,
yes,
we're getting cinematic Star Wars on a small screen with a smaller budget.
Sure.
And what they're able to accomplish with that is pretty incredible. I think there are still fair criticisms with the volume and just how they're able to, utilize that in the best ways in the right scenarios. But also, and I think I have a picture in here too, a little bit later on, that Doug Chiang's wearing the mask. They were doing a lot of this during COVID. So some of this is, of course, fair criticism, or not really fair criticism, because they were doing the best they could to produce a piece of content. But
right.
That budget it's not fun to talk about budget. It's not fun to talk about project management and all of that, but those are the realities of what they're trying to do to pump this content out and be able to do it reasonably, not spared no expense. And we blew the budget and we're not going to make this back. And we can't, it's difficult to do more content because we're not making the profits that we need to. And I'm sorry, it's a business still. We have to make money. And again, not fun to talk about, but the realism of it all.
Yeah. I mean, true to their name, they're cranking out Industrial Light and Magic. That's exactly what they're doing, just
it's
on a budget.
Perfect, here. Most appropriate title they ever could have come up with for a company.
So something out that stood out to me, and I only got a couple more things here. Something else that stood out to me was he talked about the Star Wars recipe and how it's 80% based in history or reality, and then the other 20% when they're coming up with design is all based on invention, and that can take a couple of different forms. And then he showed examples. This is a good thing. Like, he talked about it, but then he cited several examples of where it was based on reality, and then they went and twerked something or added some component to it or whatever. And then he kept going on about how Lucas was always preaching that Star Wars is not always logical, right? It's not always scientific, but it works for Star Wars. And we see so much of that today. And I know a lot of people are very critical about that. The Last Jedi with the bombs, and they were trying to get real scientific about it, trying to destroy that. But again, it's always worked. We talk about it on the show as, Star Wars science or whatever. But it was good to hear that from a creative like Doug Chiang, of all people, to say that, yeah, this is by design. This is a formula that didn't come from me. This formula came from the man himself, and we're just kind of following through on, his approach and what he wanted. So
that's always made what made Star Wars so special, though, and why it felt so eerily familiar, despite being this, spaceships and Death Stars and all these other things, right? It still felt really real because it was based on that. Just George Lucas, doing rough cuts of World War II fighters, right, to imitate the dogfight. I mean, those are the things. They're subtle on the end result. Well, they're not subtle on the end result, but the inspiration of it just seems innocuous at times.
Yeah,
but it is rooted in things that we comprehend and understand. But we have a certain fantasy element that goes on top of it, and that's what Doug Chiang's really talking about here, of saying that we could draw these inspiration because that's what makes it feel legit. It makes it feel reasonably possible that we could achieve all of these things, and then we put this fantasy element on top of it, and this really magical element on top of it.
Yeah. So the other thing, I guess, to kind of end on this little quick segment here with Doug Chiang, if you're a fan of, like you mentioned earlier, the Vader design, well, right on cue, I wasn't looking, but Vader design, they got into that a little bit. They talked about the Fortress Inquisitorius, which I got was really cool because I got a huge ovation or, big clap, round of applause from the audience when he mentioned that. And, to hear Doug Chiang, like, I don't know who was that designed all that, but to hear like somebody like Doug Chiang say, wow, they did a great job with that. I mean, just, take the victory lap at this point. But if you're a fan of like Mandalore, as we saw it more recently here in season 3 of The Mandalorian, Order 66, as we saw Mandalorian, Plazier 15, all of that stuff, he really got into some of the design pieces of that. And those were, very, very recent. Plazier 15 is like last week. We haven't even gotten the episode. And yet he was able to kind of dig into it and kind of expose a lot of it. He got into, of course, it was probably for selfish reasons, because I thought it was a really sweet moment where he was talking about the B-1 battle droid and how that was one of his very early designs, first designs he ever did with George Lucas, presented it. And for him, that's kind of that's been his baby, right? It's almost been like his trademark. If you had to give him any one thing, that was his. And it's so iconic. It's still around. And it was just really cool to see, him with that B-1 battle droid and talking about, like, I had no idea that so many years later, I'd still be involved with Star Wars and still be putting this character I designed so long ago into more recent designs because it's still relevant and part of the mythos. So, and then lastly, before we move on, it was just the standing ovation that he got at the very end. Like, everybody, the crowd was pretty good, but even when he came out, he didn't get a standing O. But even when they finished, they showed him on that Rancor from Book of Boba Fett, which I thought was really cool. But then when they pulled back and just the crowd enthusiasm and the standing ovation that he got was just really touching. You could see it on his face, like, whoa, what did I just do here? But it was a really good moment. So I enjoyed it.
Well, and it's deserved too, because those visuals, that's one of those things that makes Star Wars so special. And it's one of those things that makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars, as we often say. So, I mean, he deserves every bit of credit.
Yep. Well said.
Okay, so I think we've pretty much covered everything in the live interview. Lauren, was there anything from the live interviews that you wanted to touch on?
No, we got all my points.
Okay, because I know Ashley Eckstein was in there, Mike Quinn, Matthew Wood was in there as well. There was a couple of others. How about you, Jonesy? Was there anything that stood out for you? I was going to mention one thing about Ashley Eckstein that I thought was fun, but...
Oh, yeah, I just thought, yeah. I'm looking at my notes right now.
Okay, then go.
Y'all go ahead. I got the visuals. Y'all go.
Well, what I liked about Ashley's interview was that story that she told of her meeting Rosario was really sweet. How they hugged and took the picture. And I also thought it was interesting too, because she said that Rosario was wearing an outfit that nobody can see yet. So
probably because she's wearing traditional Jedi robes.
Possibly that would be cool. But yeah, so there's a picture that hopefully we'll be seeing at some point. But
but would she wear Jedi robes?
Well, if she's going back to becoming or accepting the Jedi as that's who she is, then why not?
Yeah, I don't.
Or something akin to Jedi robes. Maybe it's an evolution of it, but something akin to Jedi robes rather than her kind of combat garb that she's wearing these days.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that one. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't like. I like her.
I don't know what else it would be.
Well, that's a good point. Like, it's hard to wrap my head around what else it could be. But the idea that she said, I'm no Jedi, she's been kind of living that life for so long. She seems to almost double down on that at times. And then suddenly start donning the wardrobe of the Jedi. Maybe I could get there. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that she is going to get there. That's my theory.
That's my girl.
Yeah. It said it in the trailer, Jedi.
They're telegraphing it to you, Albert. Believe them.
That's right.
For once, we have to believe them.
I don't know about that. I think they were using that word in a different way than you're thinking. No, I'm kidding. There's no other way to take that word.
It's not going to go the way you think.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my moment as well. I don't really have anything else. And Matthew was always cool. Mike Quinn is the puppeteer. There he is right there. He's credited as Nien Nunb in this, but he's done so many freaking characters in Star Wars. So it was kind of cool to get that insight. And then we talked about the Bad Batch stuff. Okay. Yeah, you got more. There's Matthew Wood. Let's talk quickly then. I guess the other thing was we had the closing ceremony, and then they played that stinking video again that I'm always like, I don't want to watch this because I'm going to start crying. And I was so we were driving home from getting tacos. Jonesy was holding the phone up while I was driving. And I was sitting there
to tell them how unsafe we were.
Well, because I was going to hold the phone. He's like, no. Because I was like, okay, yeah, he's probably right. Because he had 4 coffees in his hand too. Anyways.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was remarkable. And he held it the entire time, which I thought was very good on you, dude. I'm sorry if your arm hurt after that, but he was holding the phone.
We suffer for our craft.
Yeah. And I kept looking at Jonesy like, is he crying? Because I'm starting to cry. Is he crying? And I'm like thinking, and so then I kept trying to drink my coffee so I wouldn't cry. But the point is, these videos, or was my Diet Coke? These videos are they're so inspirational. And I definitely did cry at both celebrations, because the first one I was not expecting this at all. Like when we watched it, and I thought, because you see all the stuff that you were there, all the memories, all the quotes. There was one really good quote where, he said, I lost my voice, I lost my something, but I found, my people, or my family, whatever it was. Such a great quote. But these things are always so good to watch. And it's a different experience if you're there, right? It's hard to even contextualize what that feels like to see all of that and kind of, this was your life for the last 3 days. Plus, you're super tired and emotional already. So it doesn't help. But I really enjoyed this one as well. But
it was a great recap. It always really captures the spirit of what Celebration is supposed to be. And I think this one, viewing it from a distance this year, I think they did a really good job of capturing. And of course, practically every person that came on the Celebration live stage said it right. It was an immense celebration. They were thanking the fans. They were integrating. They were interacting. They just felt like it was just this very. You could just feel the emotion the entire time, right? And it was so contagious that everything you went into, even if it was something you were like, I don't really think I'm gonna like it, there was something special about it. And it's the people. It always comes back to the people, and it's this reciprocal relationship, and this very fluid relationship between what Star Wars fans have been able to, create with the creators, with the developers, with the actors, with whomever, right? And that they've done the same thing back with us.
Yeah.
And so it's just really cool that you could actually start to feel that more these days than we perhaps ever have before, I think. And maybe we're just all becoming a little more vulnerable with one another. I don't know. COVID has done some really weird stuff to us in many positive ways as well, right? So maybe this is one of these really positive things where we recognize some of we're able to let go of all the negativity that exists within our fandom, and we're able to come together for a weekend and just have a really amazing time and really just focus on the positive and just enjoying the thing that we really, really love to spend our free time doing,
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think I agree on all that. The only thing I'm not pushing back on anything. I would say the only thing I would add to that is when you go to Celebration, like those jerk faces aren't usually there. And if they're there, they're very quiet, and they don't make a stink. You don't see them around because this is not the place for them, right? People that go to Celebration generally like Star Wars. They may not agree with everything, and I think they have the mental maturity to say, you know what, this isn't for me, but I love the fact that somebody else loves it, without trying to tear it down, without trying to belittle that person or make them feel insignificant or less of a fan in some way. And I think that's why, to kind of what your point is, this is why Celebration is so special. You're there amongst a ton of people that just get it. They get Star Wars, they love it, and they're not trying to bring anybody down. And in fact, they're lifting other people up and encouraging them to like the things they like, which is a totally different approach. I would like to think most of our listeners, if not all of our listeners, are in that same boat. But I know even a lot of the people that we just keep in our mutual social contacts and that sort of thing, they're kind of all of that same group. So it's kind of nice. It really is it's a really unique experience to go out there and be among that many people that feel just like you about something like this. So
it also feels like we're entering a time too of the, maybe not, it's like you said, like people don't have to like every single piece of content that comes out, but it feels like that we're entering a time when the positive voices and the people that want to enjoy and have fun with Star Wars are the louder voices rather than the negative ones.
Yeah. They certainly are louder. Okay. So at the very end, they always announce where the next celebration is going to be. And there was a lot of speculation. Every year, Orlando, what's wrong with you guys? Like, I don't know why these people are petitioning. They always say Orlando. It never happens. I'm not saying it's not going to, but
it's like the de facto one. It's the default one I think everyone falls back to, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the home of Disney too, right?
Sure. Orlando was rumored. We saw some folks this morning talking about New York was being rumored. But and then we saw a lot of people saying it was Japan, that they had already heard firsthand that they were going to announce it, and it was going to be Japan. I was thinking, man, that's kind of a bit of far away. But yeah, Japan 2025, 3 days only. So 18, 19, 20. I've kind of made it known. I plan on going. Like, this is, going to Japan is a bucket list item for me already. And the fact that they're going to have Star Wars there, I don't understand how anything could be signaling any stronger that this just has to happen. So still a while away, but I'm planning on going. So what about you guys? I don't want to put you on the spots, but I know it's a difficult journey to get out there for a lot of different reasons.
According to Neil, it's just a road trip.
Yeah. Yeah, that road trip ends right on the east or west coast, depending on which way you're headed. So
yeah, it's a far journey. That's for sure. Well, for us at least. And far journey plus the excitement and whirlwind of celebration. That's
and
quite
the jet
the
lag.
combo, right?
And the jet lag that comes with it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not a 3-day trip. It's really a week-long trip to make sure you got enough time to do the things you want to do. The real question, Lauren, is if Albert and I find a way to go to this thing, are you going to keep this insane schedule that we came up with for this celebration?
She doesn't have a choice.
I'll steer the ship. Yeah.
right into the rocks. Right into the rocks.
Right into the rocks, and y'all will be along for the ride. So hope you enjoy.
Yeah, this is something I would love to be able to go to. So again, we got some time to plan for it. We have 2 full years. So really about a year to, figure out how we're going to make it happen. But I think this is definitely, I'm with you, to go to Japan. I mean, presumably this is going to be in the Tokyo area, I would presume. So we'll see about that. Not a lot of specifics have been given out, but I imagine here in the next year we'll have a lot more details. And like you said, this is a place that is, every time I've heard someone go and they travel there, and it's just one of those places that like you have to go and experience it. It's just, you have to go and experience the Japan and in Tokyo. The cultural aspect of it alone, of course, is just, Star Wars is steeped in it. So how can you not go to one of the major sources of inspiration for George Lucas, of where a lot of Star Wars in its entirety is sourced from, and just creativity wise. And so to be able to go back there, and again, Japan, the reason why they went to Japan, for those that don't know, so the 3 biggest markets for Star Wars tend to be US, UK, and then Japan. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of see this with posters and things like that. Anytime you see a lot of the poster arts, especially from the original trilogy, you have a lot of Japanese posters.
Yeah.
A lot of Japanese t-shirt. I mean, so you have a lot of that. So it's a huge market. So it makes sense. That's why Star Wars goes back there and keeps that group engaged. And just like Europe, we just haven't been back there in forever.
Right.
And so it's great to be able to, it's disappointing for us in the States not to be able to just, do a quicker flight. It's about a 13-hour flight direct over to Tokyo from here. So, that goes with the territory, but they make the travel all the time. So a unique opportunity at the very least, like you said, especially with something you've wanted to do and you're a Star Wars fan, here's your, as they like to say, here's your sign.
Yep. We need to tag Neil. I know he's been to Japan a few times, so we'll have to tag him and see if we can't bring him along as a chaperone or an escort for us as well. Some of the chat, just real quick, Jeff says it's going to be the live streams at 2 a.m., so it's going to be awesome. So yeah, I forgot to mention that, Lauren. So not only will we be trying to drive this ship, but it's going to be at 2 a.m. because that's when this stuff is going to go live.
Oh, goodness.
Gary says Japan celebration is more like live from Coruscant. Yeah, I mean, that's the nightlife, right? And just the city, the atmosphere and all of that. I mean, it's just, and you're right, Star Wars is huge in Japan. Katia from Brazil, she just chimed in. It should be in Brazil. We already have the biggest convention, and it's in my neighborhood. So I would have no
objections to go to Brazil either.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. Or Austin. I mean, I'd be willing to drive to Austin. It's like 15 minutes away.
A lot of weird people there.
Yeah. All right, let's make this quick so we can get out of here and go to sleep, some of us. But no, let's talk about real quick our top 3 moments of Star Wars Celebration. Just give me your top 3. We're not going to go circle around here. But Lauren, 3, 2, 1, what do you got?
Okay, 3, Andy Serkis's main stage interview, getting to hear him talk about playing Kino Loy and how much that meant to him. 2 is the Ahsoka trailer. That got me really excited for the show coming out. And 1 is the Obi-Wan panel. It was just heartwarming. Enough said.
Yep.
Yeah, 3 for me, Doug Chiang. at the end of the day,
What?
I couldn't, even with what I saw. I know I had to sneak it in there.
You snuck it in there last minute, yeah.
Absolutely love it. 2 was Clone Wars panel. Again, I think I said that last time too. I just love the interaction with them, the love, the stories that they share. Somehow they keep coming up with new stories. I don't know how. 15 years into this, we're getting new stories about Clone Wars. And then I got to be honest with you, a dark horse, Bad Batch today actually really surprised me. And it was kind of a complete panel for me as far as, like I said at the beginning of the show, this idea of not only getting the story elements, but a little bit of that technical background and the thought behind it all. And it was just, everything just really worked really well in that panel. And so I just really enjoyed it. Plus we had the right off of the timing of it also was just an extra benefit, I think, of it. That's probably what brings that to the surface. But so many other honorable mentions out there too. But those are the 3 that really surfaced to the top for me.
Yeah. I'll start with my honorable mentions and number 18.
No, number 18.
Okay. No, okay. So my number 3.
If I knew you were going to do a speech, I would have said more about the Obi-Wan panel.
I'm not going to. No, I will try to keep this brief. So number 3 is just the announcement, or I guess seeing Phase 3, the High Republic. I just really miss all of those characters. I was so vested in Phase 1 and just getting to see the titles, even though we didn't get a lot of context and we still don't really know what's going to happen. It's just really cool that they were finally here. Like I said, I had that moment when watching the panel, like, wow, I remember 2 years ago when we were first covering it thinking, what is this going to look like? What's that landscape going to be like? And we're getting bits and pieces of it. We're here. So super excited about that. Number 2 is the Ahsoka trailer. As a Rebels fan, seeing all this live action stuff, the Purrgil, and they didn't show that to us, but the Purrgil are out there, and seeing live action Sabine and Hera and all that stuff, it just feels like it's going to be Rebels season 5, and I'm down for that. Like, I'm all in. Give it to me. And then number 1 is the movies. Star Wars for me has always been about the movies. I understand that we had to take a break, but I'm glad we're getting back into the theaters. And if I had to rank them, I think Dawn of the Jedi is the one I'm looking forward the most. It's the one that gives me the most anxiety. It's the one that I've kind of been like, maybe not, I wouldn't say positive, but like cheering for. I just have some reservations about it. But at the end of the day, I'm a huge Old Republic fan, and this is what I've been asking for many, many, many years now, and I'm finally going to get it. So that one probably rises above all the rest of them, but just the movies in general, and knowing that there's a plan is good. I can't wait for that. I can't wait to get back in the theaters and experience it all over again. So,
yeah. Another thing that was really amazing was spending time with you guys this weekend. So thank y'all for a really super fun weekend and for hosting me, of course, Albert. I think this was, aside from being a celebration, this is the next best thing. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank y'all for having me during my Jedi trials. I hope I pass.
Well, we've already tasked you with running the ship into the ground in 2 years, so I think you've passed at this point. So.
Yeah.
Or you didn't, and that's now your punishment. However you want to look at it, Lauren, it's totally up to you.
Stick around after the show. We'll talk about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you, all 3 of you as well. This has been a lot of fun, and thanks to everybody that joined us for any one of the live streams that we had. I think we did a total of 6 shows, and
it was so much fun.
It was tiresome, but it was a lot of fun, and it felt like we were at Celebration, even though we weren't. So this was good. I really had a great time.
Oh, okay. The Emperor himself shows up at the very end, Mike Rondo.
He's here every night. He just doesn't say anything. You're not fooling
anybody.
Thank you, Mike. Mike is vouching for me. So
yeah. He likes you.
But to reiterate that, a sincerest of thank you to everyone who came out for the live stream, everybody who's been watching it after the fact as well. And we really do appreciate it. We hope you've liked it. Leave us comments. Let us know what you think. Stay tuned. We do have more things that came out of Celebration that we will get to. We want to revisit, like the Ahsoka trailer, like the one you didn't see, as well as hopefully getting a better, clearer look of the Bad Batch. So a lot of content that we're going to come back to and revisit. Of course, we got Visions coming up as well. We've got to finish up Mandalorian here for a couple more weeks. So we still have a ton of content to get through for the next several months, and we're looking forward to doing it with y'all.
Yep. And for future shows coming up, where can they find us, Jonesy?
Yeah, CantinaCast.com/YouTube. And really, if you want to, now that we're out of Celebration officially, CantinaCast.com/question. Send us your questions so we can get a Q&A episode all together. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know the things that are on your mind, what you're curious about. Share your idea. And if you've got a question about that, let us know. If you're a Patreon member, please do tick the box and let me know you're a Patreon member. either your email address or your Patreon name. That's fine either way. That way I can make sure that your question is lumped in with the ones that are guaranteed to be answered, read on air, and answered as well. So cantidacast.com/question. And of course, if you have any questions about anything, cantidacast.com has links to everything you could possibly know about where to find us, Discord, all that good stuff too. So please feel free to go check that out as well.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break for 2 days. That seems kind of weird.
See you Thursday. Yeah.
See you Thursday. We'll be back Thursday to cover chapter 23 of The Mandalorian, which has already been seen by a lot of people. So stay away from the Reddits and all that stuff because spoilers are out there in galore.
They are.
But it is going to be a pretty epic episode, I'll tell you right now, from what I've seen. So thanks again for again joining us for this long haul of stuff Thursday, and then we'll be back on, I think, Sunday for another show as well. So until then, as I try to pull this up again, here we go. There's the credits. We'll see you guys in a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.